Greetings to everyone, and again and once again, Pharma Talks is with you. I'm your host, Nataliya and today we have an amazing guest in our studio, who is Paul Tunnah, who is an expert in the topic we are going to discuss, and the expert in pharma field, especially in digital transformation. So, Paul, welcome, and please tell a little bit about yourself.
Good morning, Natalia. It's great to be with you. Gosh, it's always dangerous to be introduced as an expert. I think that creates big expectations of what I'm going to say. But obviously, you and I have known each other a few years. I've been following your work with great interest. And for those that don't know me, I've spent about 25 years now, which makes me feel really old. 25 years now in the agency and consulting side of pharma, really always focused on content and communications. Part of that journey included setting up the Pharma Forum publication, which was sold to Healthware Group a few years ago, and then finally I stepped away about a year ago. So I'm now a freelance consultant, but also dabbling in the world of AI startups and content. So yeah, pleasure to be with you today. Thank you.
Paul, that's a great introduction. We are happy to kick off our topic. So, like in digital transformation, AI takes the most visual place today. It's just like an elephant in the room. Is we are in the content supply chain as like the biggest target for this transformation today. And who, except us, will know how the world of content creation in pharma will be changing. So we do understand that our system is painfully slow today because of multiple things, like we are struggling with the agencies being too creative, we are struggling with the MLR being like too thorough to analyze what we produce, we are struggling with the risks of everything. If everything we produce will be even not relevant or valid or even dangerous to us and to our patients? So there are a lot of things which are challenging us today. However, what do you think? So why this content supply chain we think is broken?
Yeah, I think if we go back, you have to remember the content supply chain, the processes that exist today haven't really changed much in the past 20 years or even 30 years. And when they were set up, it kind of takes us back to the digital age. So think about going back before the year 2000 and think about the channels that the industry had. You had reps in the field with their printed detail aids, you had meetings, maybe you were sending some emails. That was about it. So you didn't have that many channels. So at that point, you were producing content for a limited range of channels, but the content also wasn't changing very much. The market dynamics weren't where they are today. And also in the past 20 years, you think about how we communicate, how we engage. The expectation from doctors, patients, and all the other people that we engage with is to have much more personalized engagement that's targeted around their specific needs, and also to tell the story in smaller chunks. Whether you like it or not, our attention spans have become shorter and shorter. So the combination of lots of channels, having to tell the story in smaller chunks, and having to make it more personalized has created a massive content need that just didn't exist 20 years ago. And so the content supply chain just hasn't kept up with that.
Exactly. So, and this is like exactly stepping on that ground of the, smaller chunks of the story and a lot of new formats because of the new channels which are arriving. So, do you think there is a recipe how we are still in control of the story? This is what is the problem today. How do we control, or who is in the control of this story?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, first off, we need creativity. I don't think agencies can be too creative. We need that. We know we work in a clinical environment, and it should all be about the clinical data and obviously using medicines appropriately. but you still need to be able to get doctors excited about those medicines, and that's where creativity comes in. I think that the challenge then arises, like I say, when you're trying to scale that content, being able to take that upfront initial creativity and produce all the different pieces that you need. That's where I think there is an opportunity for technology to tailor that. We're not there yet, but I think we're heading in that direction of slightly more balance between human creativity and AI. But to your point, there's a couple of controls that we need around that. One is clearly all of the content needs to be compliant. We work in a regulated industry. That's a must have. We all know the challenges, the fines if you fall foul of that process. But also consistency. You raise an important point there, which is there's no point producing lots of exciting content and lots of chunks of content if, for example, in one region the message is very, very different to another region and it confuses doctors. So you have to make sure it's kind of in line with the brand narrative and the brand position.
Exactly. As to your point, creativity shouldn't be limited because this is where we are very different from AI. Absolutely. We still have a great expertise in that, and thus we are not replaced. So being in control means yes, relevancy, MLR, everyone must be safe, having not only creative material out, but also relevant to us, to patients. And there are more and more trends appearing in the content production, such as patients communication, right?
Yeah.
Very new topics we can go through. However, I know, like I know you are the expert in the field and you understand. So where still this human touch, right, in this control process is inevitable. Do we have a big difference between US and European approach on the content production? So where, like, a part of the
Yeah.
creativity, so where is the human touch?
Let me start overall with the human touch and then we'll come back to the US versus Europe. So first of all, let's think about where AI is good, or where I think AI is good. AI is very good where it's kind of quite manual intensive processes. You have good data to feed off. But of course, like any AI algorithm, it's feeding off all the information that's out there. So if you're creating something brand new, it's maybe not so good. So I think there's a place, and I think there will continue to be a place for agency creativity and that upfront brand positioning, that upfront brand creative. There are many agencies who are very, very good at that, including where I used to work with my friends at Healthware and now Eversana. They do a great job at that phase. I think, as I say, when it then comes to scaling the content, taking those upfront materials and producing the myriad of emails and websites and flyers and all that kind of stuff, at that point, you've got that existing starting point in those upfront brand materials. You've got data around different segments of doctors or patients. That's where AI, I think, can become very, very powerful. And it doesn't necessarily have to just be a time and materials process. Will agencies remain involved in that, at least in the midterm? Probably yes. But it will get a lot more efficient by using technology. Now, to the point about US versus Europe, the reality that we all exist in is the budgets within the US market are so much bigger than the European markets due to the scale of that market. And I've seen both sides of it. That means they have budgets that in Europe we could only dream of for spending with the agencies. And that does tend to mean when you look at folks working in pharma in the US, there's probably a little bit more reliance on the agencies than there is in Europe because they've got the funds and the resources to be able to go down that route. But I think, whether it's US or whether it's Europe, I think all of these companies are under pressure to recognize efficiencies and bring AI into that process.
And that's a very excellent point because, like, within us, like, making sure like we are very much efficient with our budgets in Europe, we can bring the very new experience to the US, right?
Yeah.
Where they can experience how to do more with the less budget, right?
Yeah.
And how to use the technology and the approved processes which we already established, which we challenged, and we have it on the track for a couple of years from now, that they might be these day saver for US because they are not having them today, but maybe they will need them tomorrow, right? So
Yeah.
we can still bring this fresh gasp of air to them, right?
Yeah.
And that's also very nice to just confirm being creative is just not being creative in our new AI transformed world. We need to give the good start as a human to for the AI to create the derivative content using all the
Exactly.
data. But starting point should be us, not just to be on, some back seat. So humans still in the driver's seat, in controlling seat, how they want to start this communication, how they want, like to pick up the topics, to theme, to be creative, to be relevant, and then AI can multiply, personalize, tune that to the point,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
this is where we are.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's really important when we talk about any conversation on AI to think about the end result, what we're trying to achieve. I think it's very easy to get defensive about AI, and I understand why. That's the argument of, well, will we need agencies in a few years' time? Will marketers still have jobs? Will people reviewing content still have jobs? And I understand why we go down that route, but the reality is we need to think about keeping our focus more externally. We all work in this industry because we believe in the power of pharma. We believe in the power of the medicines they bring through and the difference that can make to patients. And if that is your guiding light and that is your starting point, we need to keep focused on how can we better communicate the value of those medicines. That means doctors understand where to use them, the right patients get them. And for me, that is a blended approach. Because if you are working in a creative agency, you spend all this time carefully thinking about the positioning and how to make an impact with the brand. You want that contact to have an impact on doctors and therefore on patients. AI can help with that process around tailoring and scaling. Equally, if you're sat within a pharma company, you want your brand to do well. AI is not going to take those jobs away, but it is going to change those jobs, and it's going to bring a degree of efficiency that actually is good for everyone, including the patients.
Exactly. So like, and like we always put us patients in the center. And once we are doing that, we have all the answers, aren't we? All the
Yeah.
time, right? Even if we talk about this, MLR topic, which is like always the topic and will be the most disrupted one with AI, right? Because there's like a lot of data to consider, and AI is very good with unstructured data. So, but still, what do you think about this mission of AI acceleration of MLR? Are humans still in control?
I think they can be. And look, we touched on this. The MLR process is incredibly important. It's important that we meet the regulations, we're staying on label, we're saying all the right things about the medicines. But look at that process right now. It's incredibly slow. It can take weeks or even months to get content through because essentially what you've got there is workflow management. It's putting content into a system, it's people manually reviewing it, very often senior commercial or medical folks within pharma going back and forth with reviewers who look at everything and say, well, you can say this, you can't say that. That is a process that is ripe for disruption because you think about the data that you've got behind that process, the wealth of approved content, the ability for AI to identify claims, reference claims, check fair balance on documents, work within images, all of that is there. And actually, I think the people involved in that process, by and large, want that greater efficiency. But I don't see people stepping out of that process, at least in the short term, possibly never, because what I think is going to happen is as AI comes in, we'll go through a phase where AI can probably 60 to 70% of that automate, but we'll still be in a phase where we're checking and testing that the AI is right. It's a bit like when SatNav came in, you'd still have your map in the car just in case it didn't work. Once we get confident with that, we won't be double checking, but there'll always be those grey areas that we need to check from a human perspective, maybe 5 to 10%. And I think you'll still need a human being within the pharma company going, yep, that's all good. We can send that content out.
Like that's an interesting point I have came along like with the like recently. So we actually experimenting still with the both approaches, where we have one of the approach with the MLR acceleration. While the content has been created, we have kind of rules and algorithmic work to check whenever it is valid, check against the legislation in the region, in the country, check against the changes in the legislation and historical cases,
Yeah.
this type of work. And the other, an interesting point, we are now debating and thinking to put into the system. So to, the stimulation. So means like we can really simulate the somebody who's approving content or reviewing. So it's to create kind of a digital worker with the experience in the MLR field, where you can run your content you just built through that person views and type of the experience. So it's kind of the both ways approaches. So like when you have the algorithmic work driven by a person, or from the other perspective, you have a digital person who almost have your experience.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the methods?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea, and I think a lot of the conversation about MLR and content approval focuses on efficiency. How can we save money and save time getting content through? And I think it can absolutely deliver that, and we're starting to see that happen. But there's also an element here of consistency, because often our starting point is with the current human systems that they're perfect, and AI coming in will be imperfect and there's challenges. But the reality is, with respect to all the people that work in the current MLR process, it's not perfect. There's a degree of subjectivity in there. So you take one piece of content, you give it to two reviewers, one may say that's okay, another one may say that's not okay. And as you know, every company has their own sort of grey areas, their own boundaries around what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. So the idea of creating these kind of digital twins and bringing AI in, I think, can not only increase efficiency, it can also start to bring more consistency of decisions for individual companies around those grey areas versus the current process.
Absolutely, because you can train them differently. So you can train them with the different views on these gray areas.
Yeah.
You can make sure they are tracking every change in the regulation, and they are evolving within this. And this is like, this is the future of the human being. So we need to transfer the way we want us, the best of us, to perform tomorrow, and to make sure we can scale it through the technology and such, helpers as digital personas, right?
Yeah.
So, and the question here, Paul, so do you think that now pharma is leading this change within AI in content production? I can see on these scenes and events here and there, like pharma people are talking about their inventions in AI field. Somebody are working with the molecules and they have invented their AI assistant. Somebody with content, exactly our topic today, and they have different scenarios of using these AI assistants. So do you think this is how pharma is changing?
Yeah, great question. And I think, first of all, we talk about pharma. You and I know that every company is different. There's a whole range of different companies, and some of those companies still have big internal innovation teams. Some have disbanded those teams and rely more on external partners. Broadly speaking, do I think pharma can drive this transformation without external help? I think it's very, very hard to do. I won't say a blanket no, because I could be wrong. There could be one company that's got the expertise, but I think there are some challenges I keep seeing come up when pharma tries to do this. One is there's always the reorganizations within companies. So a pharma company developing something, and there's lots of them doing very cool AI projects. They'll do something, they'll build it for 2 or 3 years. Then there's a reorganization. The people leading that project get moved around, the project gets lost. And as you and I know, with any technology, it's perpetual beta. You've got to keep developing that and keep moving. So I think there is that challenge. The other challenge is just quite simply the focus and the availability of tech talent. We know that pharma companies by their nature are not tech companies. Can they bring the right tech people in? Yes, they absolutely can. But there was a really interesting point that was made at a conference I was at last week by somebody senior in Roche. And she was saying, look at what we're having to pay really good AI technical folks right now. Look at the opportunities those folks have within pharma and beyond. There are companies now offering fairly junior technical folks with those skills incentives that could be worth millions in stock options for startups. Pharma's going to struggle to compete with that when it comes to that talent war. So I know I'm slightly biased as you are because we sit on the outside, but I think pharma in general to do this on its own is going to struggle. I think it needs to work with those external companies who are really focused on this problem and are committed to developing and constantly updating no matter what's going on inside those pharma companies.
Exactly. So, because like the core business of pharma is our health,
Yeah,
as like as this is medicine, is cure. So this is where they stand. This is we are hoping they stand, not on the technology. On the other side, I also heard some, some not accusations, but some, doubts that vendors are able to keep up the pace the technology is moving. And yes, taking into consideration that today we are using the worst version of AI we'll be
yeah,
using in the years, right? So we may be not yet at the pace we will be in 5, 7 years from now, but I do agree with you that agencies, vendors, so all the tech people must be really evolving to support the new demand, appetite for technology in
yeah,
pharma, if
yeah.
you wish. There's an appetite, definitely. Can you see that?
Yeah, I mean, you sort of said it there. You have to be keeping an eye ahead, not just one step ahead, but 5 steps ahead, because in the world of AI, a year is a long, long time. Things are moving quickly. You have to be constantly anticipating where we're going. But I think, again, it's easy to get into these conversations about pharma versus vendors on this. I think the reality is you need that collaboration because, as we know, tech is part of the solution, but it can't solve the problem on its own. You're dealing with fairly complex workflows. You're dealing with the need to change the way people are working, which is always hard. So you need that collaboration between the pharma teams who are living and breathing those workflows every day. We need their input into the technologies to make sure it really meets their needs. That's what good customer experience is. But I also think you need the external vendors who are laser focused on solving particular problems and have the ability really to look ahead and think about where things are heading.
Paul, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Also to stress on the fact that even we are, as agencies and vendors, need to focus on collaboration between ourselves. So to
Absolutely.
create the bigger, the better offer, to stand more on the like proper on this technology ground. So to make sure like we have a solid offer to our pharma partners. So saying that, I would say we are absolutely in a good shape today to focus our attention on how AI content chain will be transformed, like how AI will transform the content chain and how we are bringing value to our customers. So what you would give us as the final like summary of the change we have discussed today?
Yeah, I think we're at a really exciting point. I mean, we've seen Pharma invest a lot in digital technologies, and obviously the terminology changes from multi-channel to omni-channel to I think now opti-channel. That's all fine. There's been lots of focus on CRM systems and gathering customer data, which underpins all of this, and then digital channels and things like next best action technology. So a lot of those pieces are now in place. The piece that is missing for me is that content supply chain, the ability to produce those personalized smaller chunks of content. So it's not to say what Pharma's doing is not working, it is. Things like with the data they have, next best action, those kind of things are delivering, but I don't think they've anywhere near reached their potential. I think when you adjust the content supply chain when you have that blended approach between creative agencies and technologies that really power content at scale and personalization and link into the data, and you integrate that with the engagement systems and things like next best action, then you've got something incredibly powerful that really gets us towards that kind of off-quoted example of the Amazon experience for doctors. And there, I think we're going to see radical change and transformation in the coming years.
Yes, so we are all, about to work on that in the upcoming years, right? So, and I really want to take a chance to talk to our fellow agencies, partners. So let us stop being too competitive. Let us look at the collaboration angles. So how we can look at those angles and bring better, faster solutions for pharma together, which will be empowering definitely our content production chain and the flow and the processes, and will put us in the control.
Yeah.
So thank you, Paul. That was an amazing conversation. So I will be really blessed if you will step in again to the studio at some time. But now, thank you and wish you a beautiful, beautiful day and a beautiful transformation ahead. Colleagues, there was Paul Tunnah with us, and it was Pharma Talks and Nataliya and Paul. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you.